Welcome, everybody. This is the weekly installment of Astrology and Cosmic Weather by Fiona Aedgar and Craig Simpson. So it's a Fiona Aedgar and Radiant Creators production. This will be for the week of July 15th. So it's Friday the 12th. And so from this moment on to the end of next week, what do the stars have in tail for us, Fiona? And how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm glad that we were able to connect and make it happen this week. The forces of evil were on us last week and they just didn't let it happen, but we are victorious this week and we're not letting people down. So on with righteousness.
Yes. Well, this week there actually aren't that many aspects. However, Mercury goes retrograde. So Mercury goes retrograde on Thursday.
Mm.
We do have a conjunction tomorrow between Mars and Neptune. So when these two planets come together, because they're so different, Mars is all about energy, ambition, and drive, and being proactive, and Neptune is kind of drifting along and in a dream world. So they're not very compatible energies. We may find it difficult to get anything done tomorrow. If you have work to do, you won't feel like doing it. So it's best just to go with the flow. Take a day to yourself, watch a movie, go for a walk at the beach, and just don't tax yourself too much.
Mm.
So the next major aspect that we have is on the 18th, Thursday, and it's Mercury retrograde time again. So this year we're not really getting a break as far as retrogrades are concerned. Venus is still currently retrograde, as we all know, and we're all feeling it. This is going to add even more pressure. The retrograde itself, the chart for the retrograde really isn't that bad at all. There's actually barely any aspects to Mercury to the other planets, so it's just going to feel like more pressure and more stress. Now it's in the sign of Cancer, so Cancers, as you know, are an emotional lot. We are ruled by our emotions. I'm a Cancer, and I will fully admit that I'm kind of moody at times and mood swingy, and Cancers are like that. So when Mercury goes retrograde in Cancer, we will all be feeling a little bit Cancerian. Here's where it gets difficult. When Mercury is retrograde, it's not easy to express ourselves using words. So we will be feeling emotional, but we won't be able to verbalize that very well.
Mm.
You know, um,
Yeah.
it's going to be a bit difficult. We may feel weepy, emotional. We'll be thinking about the past a lot because Cancer is connected to the past. So you may be thinking back on people that you used to be friends with, your family members, any number of people, and you may also hear from them. That's quite a common thing during Mercury retrograde, especially since Venus is retrograde. You may hear from that ex that you banished like 10 years ago. That's a possibility. So Mercury retrogrades are really nothing to worry about as long as we're properly prepared and we have an understanding of the spiritual purpose of this transit before it occurs, because forewarned is forearmed. Mercury retrogrades are an opportunity to improve a life area or a situation which needs revision or extra work. So in this case, it's our emotions. How do we deal with our emotions? How do our emotions interfere with our relationships? Do we express them in a healthy way? Are we too emotional at times? Or are we not expressing those emotions enough with other people that care about us? So it's just about revision, putting in a bit of extra work. Your personal retrograde story is going to depend on the house or the section of your chart that Mercury is passing through and the aspects that it will make to your own birth chart.
Mm.
So there are some kind of do's and don'ts when it comes to Mercury retrograde.
Yes.
Um, Yeah, there's just some things that you shouldn't do during a Mercury retrograde. So something that you should try and hold off on is starting a new project. If you have to start something new, then be cautious and just realize from the beginning that this may not really work out the way that you expected. So that includes like a new job, a new project that you start at work, or like anything, anything to do with that. Moving house, that's another possibility. You shouldn't do that in a Mercury retrograde because something may go wrong or you may regret it. Try not to start a new relationship during the retrograde, especially since Venus is going backwards too.
Mm.
That's not really a good start. That's kind of like a karmic relationship where it's all about those like tough lessons that we don't like to go through. So as always, don't get involved in any situation that involves deception or dishonor because it will backfire on you. Never get married under a Mercury retrograde ever. Try not to sign any documents or contracts during the retrograde. If you must, then make sure you read all of the small print and don't make any verbal agreements. Try not to make those because they'll be crossed wires. So don't panic about the retrograde either. Don't think that doomsday is coming. Well, you know, doomsday is not such an elaborate concept at the moment as the way things stand. But just try not to panic. Just get along with your daily life and just be extra cautious. Retrogrades are a natural cycle of life. No matter what, you will have to experience Mercury retrograde for 3 times a year for the rest of your life. So you might as well get used to it and instead try to see these retrogrades as periods of opportunity.
Mm.
Don't get don't get back with your ex during the retrogrades. Not a good idea. Don't rekindle a friendship that was extinguished for a reason. Don't let the bad people back in. The universe will try and bring them back to see if you still resonate with the energy of this person. So, if you previously cut ties with a friend or a family member and you hear from them, think very carefully before you let them back in. Unless it's to get some kind of closure or kind of say your piece that you didn't get to say before. But if someone betrayed you or used you, then they will do it again. So another thing that we need to watch out for during these retrogrades, you need to be careful about car problems. Make sure you're getting all the work done to your car that you need. Electronic devices are more likely to fail because the energy is so unstable. If you do have any issues during the retrograde, then you should thank the universe for giving you a great opportunity to grow. And
Mm.
honestly, that's pretty much it for the week. There's really not much going on at all, apart from Mercury retrograde.
Yeah, and with Mercury retrograde, since something else I would throw in there is uh, be careful of rash decisions. And so my rising is in Cancer, so I'll be feeling it a bit. And I know for me, being a bit of a, well, my rising is in Cancer, so there you go. But I can be a bit emotional. And one of the things for me, a big don't during retrograde has always been, like I say, rash decisions, because I've oftentimes felt like it's just not your big, I should say, your best big decision time. It's very easy to be frustrated with business partners, with your significant other, or you're just for fun other, or whatever, or those couple that you're seeing, whatever, because already, even though we're in the shadow now, we're not even in Mercury retrograde. One company I work with, we just had this just big blow up, and I had to remind myself that Venus is retrograde, Mercury is in its shadow period, getting ready to go retrograde, and I was like, I just need to not make any decisions, like,
Hmm.
because it's just this small amount of time, you know, where I've always felt like, if possible, it's like if you're angry with someone, a situation, if it's very easy to kind of throw the baby out with the bath water, as they say, which has always been an extreme saying. I can't imagine somebody peeing that. I've always thought, like, there's just certain sayings. I'm like, where the crap did that come from? you know, but I think when we get emotional and we allow that kind of negativity and that rashness of retrograde sometimes to guide our decisions, we'll feel like we did something that extreme. Sometimes very, very quickly. So that's just one that I would throw. What do you think of that? Just be careful of making rash decisions, because maybe you're just not quite in the best mindset. You may be afflicted.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right, and there is a risk of that during this Mercury retrograde in Cancer because we'll be feeling so emotional. You know, if we have an argument with someone, we shouldn't like end the relationship or, never see them again because it's Mercury retrograde in Cancer. The other person is feeling just as emotional as you are and probably confused as well. So yeah, it's not a good idea to make any major decision on these retrogrades, especially during this one because Venus and Mercury are retrograde at exactly the same time. So you're totally right.
Yeah, and I think does Venus go direct the end of this month, or is it later than that?
Venus goes direct on the 25th,
Twenty fifth.
Yeah, June 25th. So that is good, but we have to understand that there's going to be a bit of a shadow period after that. And the week after it goes direct, we'll be in that intense shadow period where it sometimes feels a bit worse because Venus is stationing, her energy is very unstable, she's re-emerging from her hibernation. So that is a week to watch, the 25th of June.
Mm. And that's about the time that Mercury goes direct, right? It'll be somewhere around there.
Mercury actually doesn't go direct until July 12th.
Oh wow. Okay, so we have a. Oh, that's right. So we have a. That makes sense. With okay, I get it. Well, yeah. So everyone avoid making rash decisions, and also just realize that the world is a bit crazy right now. We're seeing the globalists trying to push their COVID-19 bullshit again. So we've got that going on. They're like, oh, it's not over. It's like now that the world protests are starting to simmer down. I felt like you've got the globalists have different layers, different departments, and some are at odds with each other, and then some are not. And I kind of have felt like I think they might be at odds with each other. So you had like the COVID deep state just cranking away towards their global technocracy, and then the world protests broke out and kind of stole their thunder for a while. I imagine there being these like globalist conference calls, like, "Hey, who do you think you are? You're stealing our airtime." Well, anyway, they seem to have come to an agreement, and as the protests are now slowing down, you've got the COVID nonsense just cranking up again. It's not over. So
Mm,
we really have almost like on some levels, humanity is sort of facing a bit of a dark night of the soul because we're looking at, I don't want more of the, a lot of people now know who are going to know that the COVID stuff was nonsense, and they're tired of their cities being torn up by the rioting if you're in an area where that's happening, and the division. And so we're really at a time where we got to focus on what you want to create, your own sigils, because there's amazing cosmic energy coming in. You can create, you're a powerful creator, but at the same time, I do feel like humanity is going through a bit of a dark night of the soul because it's almost like we're getting punched in the face by Mike Tyson as hard as he can, just boom. And it's like, wake up or just finally forever get knocked out. Yeah.
yeah,
And so,
yeah.
along with the retrograde, I would just remind people that so much of humanity is going through a dark night of the soul, and they're going to wake up or not. This is a big time, and also, yeah, don't be over hopeful. but especially don't lose hope in humanity, at least until the end of the month. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty crazy. Like the Mercury retrograde and Cancer thing. I mean, we're totally seeing that in these protests. You know,
Mm.
all of these millennials like having tantrums, you know, in the street and destroying their own neighborhoods. I mean, they actually tore down a statue of Robert the Bruce. Like he was the King of Scotland in the 1300s. He fought against the English, and they spray painted on his statue that he was a racist. He
Yeah.
probably never set eyes upon someone, you know, a black person. Like these people don't even know their own history. It's shocking.
Yeah, it's just a statue, so it must be evil. It represents the patriarchy and racism and bleh,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's very sad. So we are seeing that time, but I do, as I think our common friend Thomas Sheridan has said, this is just like the morons are huddling together, and it's kind of like the last cry of a bunch of people who are not going to make it in an evolutionary way. They're
Mhm.
really not part of the future, and so they're pissed. And they're lost. So yeah, what?
Yeah, I think that whole you know, social justice warrior thing is imploding. I think what we're seeing is it dying.
Mm, it would be good if it was, and I think it may be. And actually, what I could say is, if you have cards for the week, that'd be great. Let's look at those, and then because kind of something about the cosmic weather I wanted to touch on before we finish up is
Mhm.
exactly that. Because right now in Seattle, I really think there is an epicenter of the negative demons of the past that have been unleashed. I think I have a certain connection there because I lived there for quite a while. And we could talk about that in the cosmic weather because I think it's relevant to a lot of what's going on, maybe everything. So, yeah, do you have cards for the week?
Yes, I do. And the cards are very interesting. So I got the Emperor, the King of Pentacles, and the Ace of Pentacles. So all very financial, connected to finances here. So this Emperor, I think that these social justice warriors and Antifa people, they need a good dose of the Emperor. The Emperor needs to come along and whoop their asses because this is what happens when you don't discipline your kids.
Yes.
So, yeah, the emperor is a father figure, but I also get that this could be, you know, someone like Trump or maybe Boris Johnson, hopefully, uh, laying down the law to these kids that are wrecking their neighborhoods. So the King of Pentacles is an Earth sign man. He's Virgo, Capricorn, or Taurus, and these two cards, so these both represent men. This could be someone's husband and their dad, or it could be someone's brother and their grandfather. So these two men are very relevant right now. I do feel like this emperor person is so we talked about the whole Mercury retrograde and Cancer thing, and that it's going to be more difficult for people to express their emotions in a healthy way. This Emperor guy is struggling to express his emotions, and I really feel like he's keeping way too much in, and he's appearing as maybe being cold to like his wife or his kids, and he needs to try and open up a bit. Maybe someone out there is married to this guy, or maybe it's someone's dad. There are many possibilities. So with the last card, the Ace of Coins, or Pentacles, this is very much a card that's associated with money. It's a financial opportunity. We've been talking about that over and over again since we started this podcast. There are many opportunities for people to cash in on this crisis by creating businesses and in investing in business that will flourish during this time. The other thing about this that I'm getting is that someone is someone's husband, because these are both men. I'm not picking on the guys, but these cards are both male cards. Someone's husband is being like too controlling about their finances or is being a bit of a miser, and he needs to kind of try and rein that in. But I know that a lot of businesses are opening again. They're reopening this week, I think, in Northern Ireland. I'm not entirely sure because I don't watch the news, I don't follow it, but that's what I heard. So hopefully some people are going to be looking at an increase in their finances, and any problems that they've been experiencing will come to an end. The Emperor is also a card of discipline. Where do you need to have more discipline in your life? Is it your diet? Is it in your job? Is it within your relationship, etc.? So be disciplined. That is the lesson for us during this kind of emotional and chaotic Mercury retrograde in Cancer.
I like it. Well, the emperor to me also oftentimes represents uh, a bit of being traditional, like what works and what doesn't. I've
Yes.
often thought, I mean, and that is something for people to maybe start looking at. I mean, there's so much going on in the world right now, so that could come into play so many different ways. But definitely, along with the Ace of Pentangles, business is opening. Focus. I would say pentangles. Everybody laughs. Pentangles. you know, um, but really, uh, the emperor. I like the emperor card. I mean, so what works, what doesn't. Sometimes what's traditional isn't so awful. Just because your great grandparents did it doesn't mean that it's evil. you know, and wisdom is an important thing, and it's gained over time. And so, oftentimes, I think the emperor can also represent reality. What is real and what is not. Those are just my
Yes.
interpretations.
Yeah.
And so I think there might be a bit of people looking at, hey, what works and what does not. You know, and am I on the right track? And is society on the right track? So maybe that's something we all need to get in touch with, because right now, um, I think we see a lot of society doing things that don't work. Like the COVID-19 nonsense that does not work for society. Also, I look at, like, now they're rearing that crap again. Oh, it's not over. It's going to be so horrible. Since those protests are dying down, we want our attention back. And with the new threats of COVID coming back, that's been just dumping the traditional markets around the world, basically. And I definitely think that's something that people just do not want, because nobody wants the global economy to be crappy. It's a pain in the ass, and so we don't want that. So I hope that people start getting with what works and what doesn't. And the COVID scam does not work, and rioting and rioting and burning cities and never-ending protests, they just do not work. So hopefully we'll get back to what works. We'll get a little bit of wisdom, and that would be great if we had some leaders that were like, hey, maybe you need to smack these kids around a little bit. Enough.
Hmm.
We're gonna get this playground in order. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Ace of Pentangles. I mean, businesses are opening. They definitely are. I mean, it's been an ongoing process, but over here, it's nice to see, and I really feel this heartbreak. So many people are going, oh my gosh, I just thought I could go back to my favorite restaurant that's opening up. I thought I could go do this and go do that, and
Nope.
now they're threatening more COVID nonsense. And I really see just an angst in our town here. So I think that's good. But so they're great cards for the week.
Yeah, and you touched on something so important there about tradition and your ancestors. That's exactly what the kind of social communist people are trying to eradicate. They're telling us because we have white skin, we should be ashamed of our ancestors. Some of them are groveling in the streets. It's totally disgusting, but we need to take strength from those traditions. I'm a pagan, so I'm following traditions that are thousands of years old,
Mm-hmm.
and it brings me, the rituals that I do and the connection that I have with my ancestral gods. It strengthens me and gives me clarity and peace. So that's exactly what we should be doing. The emperor is a very good symbol of that.
I think so. I think so. Yeah, it is a great time to ask our ancestors and what we find sacred for help. It's not a bad thing to ask for some guidance. Hey, do it for sure. Um, and even hang out with the emperor for a day. Put the tarot card in your pocket,
Yes.
and just say, hey, I could use a little bit of, real strength. Uh, show me what works. Show me a better way of seeing all of this. Um, and then for cosmic weather this coming week, something I'll just start off, quickly is, like I say, I lived in Seattle, and it was a place that was such a real haven for like Trotskyism and Lenin and Stalin, Communist Manifesto. I mean, when Bernie didn't, get nominated for the Democratic side of things a couple years ago, it's like the whole place went into mourning. They actually have a statue of Lenin in the center of it's not Seattle, but it's the city right next to it. They're pretty much the same city, and I've lived all over America, and I live in California, both northern and southern and central. So I mean, nothing can, when it comes to a love for a straight up neo Bolshevik revolution. I've never lived in a place that had that like Seattle does. I mean, Seattle is weird. It's a city of just absolute nasty degeneracy, especially sexual perversion. Nasty place. Yeah, there's some good things about it, but honestly, not many. So other than that, it's like it's not surprising what's going on there. So as the protests have died down, we do have a bunch of people that kind of took control of a little 6 block area there. And we actually have, a lady. Her name is what's her name? Suwant. Yeah, Kashima Suwant. And she actually ran as a socialist, and she's part of the city council, and she's been there for a good number of years. And she does things like writes legislation to tax every evil business like Amazon. They have to basically pay reparations for all the damage that they do per employee because of the inequality that they cause.
Right.
I'm not kidding you, Oh my God. So the place is off the rails, and it has been for a long time. And so now that we have this 6 block area where they overran a police precinct, tossed them out, there's signs saying you are now leaving America. They consider it a sovereign nation now. And if you look at the city council, like the mayor, all they can do is kiss the protesters' ass. They think it's beautiful. The governor is like, I think it's great. That state has got serious, horrible problems, and that city is just off the rails and has been for a long time. So for cosmic weather, what I would just say is that I try not to look at it too much, but one of the reasons why I've been watching there is like, so you have this militant zone in the city. This is in America. I cannot believe this, where the cops ain't allowed in. You've got kind of violent degenerates that are sort of holding the place hostage. You've got scared business owners. Residents do live in the area. It's off the rails crazy. But you've got the state, which is allowing it. And so our federal government ultimately will probably have to come in and do something about it. And now we have, of course, at the Seattle level, the police department are trying to bargain with them. Like, we don't bargain with terrorists. You come in and you burn shit down, and you beat on people, and you extort people, and you say this is not part of America anymore. This is our new, neo-Bolshevik bullshit revolution zone. It's crazy that this is happening. And so when it comes to psychic weather, I would just say there is a portal where it is opened up, and there are demons streaming into this world. And Seattle has been that way for quite a while. I'm not surprised this happened there, but I've kind of been watching that because, for one thing, little like Sama Sawant, as she was saying, now that this place is kind of like owned by the terrorists, basically. She says, our movement needs to urgently ensure East Precinct does not hand it back to the police, but is turned over permanently into community control. Basically, Communist Party control,
Wow.
in our country. And you can see where that place is off the rails. So, it's something to watch because I think cosmic energy wise, cosmic weather wise, ultimately, I I don't want to watch it, but there it's almost like there is just this portal, there is just this hot spot where it's just good and evil, basically like the globalist desire to like what they're doing with the COVID scam, what they're doing with like the riots and the looting and the protests around the world. Like it's almost like think of it as a pimple with a whitehead. This is where it's getting squeezed and it's going to explode. Basically, this is, and it's weird having lived there. I'm just like, no, and it gives me a little bit of validation. I'm like, no wonder I lost faith in humanity while I lived there. And now I moved here to a beautiful Arizona, a proud state, and I regained that. But while living there, I consider myself a strong person. But I was like, humanity is shit. Who cares? You know, because when you're surrounded by, and if you look at like the Twitter, you look at like one thing is the social media it that narrative and all the hashtags, all the social media, all the news is being so censored, edited, controlled by the mainstream media and the social media companies. Because I'm watching this and I'm going, wait a second, you mean all there is ugly hippies like saying that it's utopia and no one understands what all this beautiful world they've now created within this 6 block area where they planted 3 tomato plants and are going to feed humanity now. I mean, I'm like, I don't buy it. So anyway, if people so desire to look, it's something to watch because I really think there is an extreme battle between the globalist desire to win the push. This is a deep, deep strategy game, you know, and I really think what happens there matters. And there's a tremendous amount of, you know, forces greater than us that are right there. This is a cosmic. This is a battle of the gods, basically
Mm-hmm.
happening. This is a big, big deal. Anyway, that's my cosmic weather. Keep an eye on that and see what happens because good and evil are straight up face to face in an MMA cage match right there.
Yeah, exactly. And don't forget, we're all in this war, whether we're in the midst of the protests or having our businesses burned down, we are all in this war. So it's really important that we keep up our psychic protection, our psychic firewalls, make sure those are put them up every day as soon as you get out of bed and before you go to sleep, because you're more vulnerable to dark energy and psychic attacks when you sleep. So I just like to remind everyone, just keep that up, keep doing your work. If it gets too much for you, like turn off your phone and turn off social media and just go outside for a walk. Because I felt myself during the week, reading all of these articles and seeing all this crazy stuff happening around the world. I felt the panic started to infect me. So I turned it off and then I reminded myself that I live in a tiny village in Northern Ireland and nothing new has happened here, nothing has changed. It's still exactly the same way as it was a year ago.
Mm,
So you need to do whatever you have to do to keep yourself spiritually healthy and feeling good.
absolutely, and that's something I. It's good that you remind me of that because good for me to hear because uh, I could say in the past week we kind of slacked off a little bit in some of our practices to keep that energy high. You know, for me, I love the Wim Hof breathing. I like to do the dispensa meditations, but also just meditating, and then of course being healthy. Um, you know, I do lots of physical extreme exercise. I mean, you name it. We all have our practices, but I would say, especially during this retrograde period, and as Venus is still in retrograde to the end of the month, this is actually a great time to have just outright a bit of discipline. Because sometimes we do things when we feel like it. We do things when the energy is right. We do things, you know, we're a little candy assy. You know, we're like, well, when everything's just perfect, I will do all my good habits. This month especially, what do you think might be a good time to say, you know what? I don't care how I feel. I'm going to be regimented. I'm getting my ass up. I'm doing my positive meditation before I go to bed. I'm saging the bedroom. I'm meditating. I'm going into bed with a positive energy. I won't let myself go to bed in dread. I will like get my energy up if I have to like whatever I must do, stand on my head while drinking half a bottle of wine, whatever it takes. I will do it to keep my energy up. And I don't owe the world feeling like shit. I don't.
Hmm.
I don't, and I won't. Hmm.
Yeah, because actually, when you feel like you don't want to, or you try to convince yourself, ah, I don't need to do it today, I'm fine, that's when you need to do it the most.
Yeah, and it's like that line, the truth will set you free. I'm like, yeah, it does, but it pisses you off first. I mean, big time. So it's true. It's like, and that's the thing. The nice thing about it is, this is a great month, the rest of the month for that discipline of I'm gonna have my schedule. I'm gonna do my positive stuff that gets my energy as high as it can be, and I will media fast if I have to, if it's too much, because like I say, like we've talked about before, those people who can keep their energy high, keep that creative power high, focus on their sigils, what they want to manifest. Really, when this shitstorm blows over, they're going to be that horse that jumped the gate way before anybody else did, and no one's going to catch up to them. So, I think it's a powerful time. We just need to remember it. And so, yeah, it's the thing. If you have a regimented schedule, then you don't have to worry about whether you feel like doing it or not. Sometimes it's better just to do it mechanically rather than worry about, as millennials call it, the feels.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I guess, is there anything else we want to wrap up with?
I don't think so. I think that's everything. Just Mercury retrograde this week. Remember to be disciplined. Don't be shutting your emotions away. Make sure you express your affection and your love to the people that are important to you. I think that's everything about this week, really.
Definitely is. And I just mentioned we interviewed just like a day or two ago over on Radiant Creators. Lucho, amazing mind, great, amazing artist. He's kind of a crypto artist, and he recommended a book called The War of Art, which is very good. And it's about exactly this, basically winning against your resistance. Something to check out. If it's very, very short. Well, anyway, this has been Fiona Edgar and Craig Simpson. And we made it happen this week. The forces of evil did not beat us, and I hope people got a lot from this. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.